What's going on, my fellow A-Plusers? It is I, your host as always, Adam Perez, back once again with another Supergirl review, as I believe this week was episode number 14 as we continue along with this series. Set to go ahead and wrap up early November, guys, so maybe about, 4 or 5 episodes certainly left for us to go, and I'm really eager and looking forward to it. I've honestly really enjoyed the pacing of this season, minus the maybe first 3 episodes or so that we wind up getting once we got back sort of from like the mid-season finale, if you will. But I feel like ever since we got introduced to Kelly as the Guardian, along with the introduction of the totems really being the main thing for this season, I really have enjoyed how the pacing has certainly picked up going into the final stretch of this season, and I do think that the remainder of the episodes that we do get will either going to be on par with this or if not better. So I am really looking forward to it, considering the fact that I was a really big fan of this week's episode. Solid, enjoyable, and I thought for the most part, despite the fact that a lot of the focus wasn't necessarily on Kara or Supergirl, despite the fact that she certainly is dealing with her own dilemma that we'll tackle here in this episode review, I do love the fact that it really gave some of the other supporting characters a really great opportunity to grow, and I think also give us a chance to kind of see maybe some of the directions that they certainly might go for the remainder of this season also. So overall, I had a really good time with this episode, and I think for me, the idea of seeing Nyxly acquiring the newest totem in this episode, the Humanity Totem, I thought was interesting in regards to at least shining a completely different light on the character, considering the fact that using the Humanity Totem in this episode this week causes those in the area to have all their humanity sort of stripped away, but acquired by the holder of the totem. So while they are stripping people's humanity away and causing destruction and chaos and fights all amongst National City, getting to see Nyxly built up with more compassion and feeling for people was definitely a very big change of pace, just based off of how we've seen her act for a majority of this particular season so far. So I definitely got some chuckles in seeing just how Nyxly was like caring about Mitch, who like cut his hand on the ship and things like that, was kind of sulking in the corner because he can just feel like compassion for the world and stuff, wanting to really do good by it and possibly change it and help it and that sort of thing. So it was very interesting to kind of see how Nyxly was acting up in here while she had the Humanity Totem, but clearly all that compassion just too much for somebody who's supposed to be the main villain of this season, and decides to give all that up just so she can get herself back, and winds up sacrificing one of her totems by the end of this. So we're kind of tied now here with Supergirl and Nyxly, both of them now having sort of one totem apiece. So it's, who knows, maybe it's going to come down to like the very last totem that these two are certainly going to be fighting over. You know, I was kind of curious the direction in which they were going to go with that, if Nyxly would acquire like all of the totems and have Supergirl really behind the 8 ball, but it seems as though it might get a little bit closer than that, but we'll definitely have to see as this season certainly progresses. But you know, we really kick off with this episode here for Supergirl, understanding that Kara is very much still connected to Nyxly. She really can't just stay still or chill for a moment, if you will. She's just kind of too worked up getting that opportunity to be linked with her, and you know, not only feeling Nyxly at times, but other times maybe not necessarily feeling her, and then thus being just worried that maybe they're not doing enough to try and hunt her down or try and get to the next totem before Nyxly does. So you can really tell here that Nyxly has really gotten into Kara's head, not necessarily trusting herself, even to the point in this episode where we see Kara doing some uncharacteristic things in regards to pushing her friends, especially Lena, in here to maybe do something that's maybe against what Lena certainly would normally do, and clearly something that's against what Supergirl would certainly do also. So the fact that Nyxly is not only just one step ahead of her, but in her mind also they're connected, definitely does have Supergirl certainly worried. I mean, the idea of getting to the point of doing whatever it takes for the greater good, I mean, damn, how many times have we heard any villain make that mention, right? And I love the fact that Lena's like, what does that sound familiar to you, right? Like, and I know they mentioned Lex Luthor, but I'm pretty sure Lena's probably thrown out that term once or twice in her life also, for the greater good sort of mentality. So I definitely do think, again, while Kara certainly wasn't the main focus of this episode, you can really tell the effects that Nyxly and just this battle is certainly having in regards to her. But speaking of Lena, look, I gotta say, man, one of my favorite scenes in this episode is probably when we get the opportunity to see William along with Lena chilling in the lab. Now, I really love the design of this lab that they wind up putting together, and to believe it or not, I actually kind of enjoyed the mix of magic and science here, if you will. You know, she hasn't yet gotten to the point of like conjuring spells out of her hands and stuff, or blasting people, or, you know, conjuring powers out of her body and things like that. So like, I'm cool with it as long as we don't get to that point, right? Like, as long as she's not gonna start busting out like Scarlet Witch spells, and one day she's gonna come in with a whole new costume and hairdo and, you know, posing and stuff. Like, that's just not how I'm picturing Lena Luthor in my head, considering somebody who is pretty grounded in her life, clearly being introduced to magic for the first time. I do like the combination of seeing how they're experimenting with magic with her, but also allowing her to keep her sort of science mentality, which I think could probably go really long way. If you approach the magic concept of Lena that way, you might have me on board here. For somebody who is completely against it, like, man, last minute, right? The final season, we haven't hinted at anything about Lena's past being magic involved, and now all of a sudden before the season, we somehow want to make her another superhero sort of thing. If they don't go that full out route and they really execute it well, which is what I mentioned in the previous episode, like, they could pull me on board with this if the execution is done right. And I thought this was the first step to making that a successful transition for Lena Luthor, certainly going in that direction. So I hope it's continued to be handled in a proper way, not a full-on costume by the end of the season, but just the more subtle, the better, is what I personally think. But you know, who certainly knows. But I love the communication that her and William wind up having in here. The idea of her not necessarily being able to get the spells right, you know, following all the information in her mom's book sort of to the T. And I just thought it was a really cool comparison that William had from magic to baking. You know what I'm saying? The idea that you can follow ingredients all day long, but you ever heard of that term, sort of this was made with love, right? That's exactly what William's certainly referring to in here, that you got to put a little bit of your own personality, your own heart into it. It's great to follow the directions and things like that, or the ingredients and stuff, right? But you got to add a little bit of yourself when putting all this stuff together to really bake or make the best sort of magic spell you certainly can. And so I really appreciated that advice that William had for Lena, because it definitely does go a long way. And I think when she, you know, despite the fact that, yes, while she's not the biggest believer in magic, maybe having a little faith and a little heart probably might go a long way of opening the doors for you, right? And she clearly finds that out in this episode, understanding, you know, maybe some of the ingredients you're using isn't quite what they were back in the day, right? Being smart enough to understand the differences and making changes where certainly is needed and accordingly. And we definitely see that some of the spells Lena uses in here, well, I should say the final spell that she used in here certainly worked. Wasn't necessarily the spell, though, just to be honest. Not necessarily the spell she was originally going for, because she clearly messed it up. But the idea of messing up the spell gives them the idea to just reuse that spell again to amplify what's certainly kind of going on here. And for me, I just think as far as a Lena character goes, you know, the idea of her listening to this plan from Supergirl and originally not being on board with it, I think shows Lena's growth as a character, because I think maybe in the past she would have been completely on board with it, right? Again, for the greater good, even if it means hurting the citizens of National City in order to draw draw out the enemy and win the day sort of mindset. Yeah, I think that's a really big step for Lena, and at least being honest enough with her friends to let her know that, listen, I'm trying to draw the line at some place, you know, especially when you guys are asking me to use ability that I'm not even 100% on board with. Because it honestly did confuse me when Lena says, no, I'm not going to do that, Supergirl. And then literally when they come in with a plan, it being the same plan, I thought to myself, what is going on? But I do think that there is something important about the idea and concept of transparency, right? Because clearly the idea originally was the same plan, but not to tell anybody what was certainly happening or going on. But with you having somebody like William, who's doing such a great job of covering the Super Friends team, to do something that's super risky and maybe not necessarily in the best interest of the public, because this could go absolutely terribly wrong and be very risky. I think the idea of at least being transparent about it and putting it out there for people to digest and make their own opinions about it, I think definitely does go a long way, right? Like, I'd rather tell you the truth and have you judge me than lie to you and there be another truth out there and then you just assume just absolutely the worst, or maybe you assume the best of the situation, but when the truth does come out, then you've got a bone to pick with me because of the fact that I lied to you, right? Like, we talk about Supergirl really being clever. Well, sometimes not necessarily clever. Sometimes they literally want to punch you in the face with like societal issues. But in this regards, I felt like this was a pretty clever and unique way of showcasing just maybe as a social, like the social issues and the climate that we're living in, maybe the idea of like what's true news and what's fake news out there, right? Like, what can you trust, what can't you trust? And maybe even not necessarily that, but like if you just think of like our political systems, those in charge, you know, people say that they want to be transparent with the public, but still they don't, right? And we get all this leaked information and stuff that kind of comes out, and you start learning the truth about billionaires not paying taxes and whatnot, or whatever the case may be behind the scenes, that people want to put up sort of smoke screens and paint a pretty picture for you. But when you dig deep inside of it, you come to find the truth, and the truth is extremely ugly, right? You know, again, I don't want to get political, but I mean, you could go back and look at the Afghan war, right? As 20 years have passed, you know, they painted this picture of things are going perfectly well and things like that. And when you look deep down as to all the corruption and all the lies that took place, you have a completely different a view on it these days and have a much more powerful opinion about it. And I think that's exactly what Supergirl is sort of tackling in here. The idea that, yes, while this plan is risky, the idea of pulling off the risky move and not telling the public about it, and it going terribly wrong could easily backfire. But at least if you're going to pull off this risky move, at least be honest about it and let the people of National City judge you. And I would like to see maybe in the next couple of episodes some people giving interviews about, you know, the methods that Supergirl and her super friends took to kind of save the city. Like, we're appreciative of it, but damn, did you have to use this sort of as pawns and really cause more mayhem and destruction with us to get that person, right? So there's always going to be voices out there, but I think the idea of at least being transparent removes certain aspects of that might make it a little bit easier for some people to digest. You know what I mean? So I thought that was pretty telling in here as to why they decided to go along with this plan the way that they certainly did. But you know, again, kudos to how they're utilizing Lena in here. Again, I am still concerned. I probably will be concerned until the very last shot of this season. But again, the execution in this episode, the mix of magic and science, it's kind of working for me. It's kind of working for me. And speaking of one of my favorite scenes being the William and Lena stuff, let's talk a little bit about William in here, because we do see Andrea Rojas really pushing William's buttons to be an even better investigative reporter, really wanting him to get the nitty gritty and all the secrets from the Super Friends as much as he can. You know, a little bit upset with maybe some of the lack of information that he gets originally, but his final piece is fantastic, and I absolutely love that about her. But I love the fact that William's getting a little bit of a backbone here. He knows he's got the upper hand now that he's connected with the Super Friends. They have a much better understanding. Even offers his future stories to the Daily Planet, which I thought was a really good sort of punch in the face to Andrea, that she's got to pick her battles. You know what I'm saying? But I thought he worked really well with the Super Friends in here. Not, in order to get the inside scoop, not necessarily stepping on people's toes, trying to get the landscape of not only the Watchtower, but what's acceptable, what's not, and then eventually standing his ground and not wanting to be like, look, don't bullshit me, guys. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm here to go ahead and speak the truth and shine some light on what you guys are doing, and it doesn't have to come across negatively, right? You don't have to hide that stuff from me. I think William's a good enough reporter in order to tell the story that he certainly needs to. And I think this is a really good position for him, especially to continue to keep him involved in this particular series. But I just truly love the whole new outlook on William this year as a character, now that they've removed some of that romantic relationship from the mix. Now that it is a much more platonic and, professional relationship, not only with Kara, but clearly with the Super Friends also. It definitely makes me feel like he's here for a purpose and not just placed in this series to be sort of like a boy toy or, a love interest for Kara. He definitely has a much bigger purpose now. And for that, I absolutely dig it. So I thought he had a great mix of being respectful, but also pushing the Super Friends to not be afraid to tell the truth in his articles and things like that. So I can't believe I'm saying it, but I feel like his attachment here with the Super Friends has really made William a rather enjoyable character for me. And last year, had you told me Mr. Perfect was going to be, somebody that I look forward to. Now, granted, he's not like, I can't wait to watch Supergirl this week for William's next storyline. Not at all. But I can at least stomach him this season, to certainly say the least, when it comes to Mr. Perfect and his goodies, or I should say his baked goods, his goodies, like my goodies, not my goodies. What is that, Sierra? No, I definitely don't look at William like Sierra. So let's see here. Oh, and last but not least, guys, can we talk about Alex and Kelly here for just a minute? Because I gotta say, and quick honorable mention, I said this before about the casting. Whoever does the casting for the young talent in here, incredible stuff. I mean, whether it be Joey that we wind up seeing a couple past episodes, or even this little girl Esme, I believe she was the same girl that we saw with Joey right in that foster home before they got pulled. And so I'm assuming this is Esme's new foster home that we see her in here. And I think she's just absolutely, just not only just the most cutest and adorable little girl, but I don't even know how old she is, but how is she acting? Like, how is she acting this professional at such a young age? Remembering all these lines, the facial expressions and stuff, right? Like, she's got to be, what, like 5, if that sort of thing? I'm just impressed, man. Like, I'm literally just impressed by some of the young talent that they've managed to get, from Joey to Esme to young Kara to young Alex. They do amazing work in here. But the question that I have at the end of this episode is, did Alex and Kelly just adopt Esme? Did they literally just bring her home with her? Because, listen, we know that Esme needed a second home, or a third home at this point. Her foster parents that she was with at the beginning of this episode, I thought was going to be a great fix for her. But when they find out that she's got abilities, instead of protecting her, they want the young girl to protect them. And then once she's done protecting them, they want absolutely nothing to do with her. But this is a storyline for Alex that has been around for a few seasons now. At least was since season 4, maybe. It's one of the reasons why Alex left the DEO in the first place, because she wanted to start a family, right? Eventually maybe get married, start a family, have a kid, whether that be her own or adopted sort of thing. And unfortunately, with that actress that was her previous girlfriend wind up departing the show, they clearly moved on to bigger and better things. And I wasn't quite sure if they would ever get back to this point for Alex. But if there has been anything that Alex has certainly wanted, it's always been a family. And so a part of me is kind of hoping that's exactly what we're going to be getting here. Look, I don't know how she's going to balance the concept and idea of being Sentinel, and then of course you got Kelly as Guardian. So with both of them being sort of like ground level or vigilantes at this point, superheroes, I do wonder where that balance is going to be of being a mother and saving other people's lives. You know what I mean? But the fact that they remembered storyline purposes of what Alex's goal and what she's always wanted in her life, and are now tackling that here to go ahead and maybe wrap up this season. Again, this could have played out two ways, right? This could have played out in a sense of, we got to give this little girl some hope that everything's going to be okay. We can't look that depressed around her. So let's have a big smile on her face, hold her hands, and walk her to the van where she can be taken to her next foster home. But for some reason here, just based off of the looks that Alex and Kelly gave each other, it's hard to just imagine that they wouldn't pick up that responsibility to care for her themselves. You know what I mean? Absolutely adorable, super talented, an alien no less, right? If anybody can relate, it's definitely those two, just based off of all the aliens that they sort of already hang out with. But with this being the final season, I love the idea of Alex finally having a kid and the family that she always wanted. I truly hope that that's the path that they certainly go down. Because again, it's been teased, it's been hinted at over the past several seasons, but they've never pulled the trigger on it. So I'm hoping that's exactly what we're gonna get here, because I do think that would be a great way to end off Alex's story for this season. But listen, guys, at the end of the day, these are just simply my A+ opinions. I want to know yours. What did you guys think about this particular week's episode of Supergirl? And listen, if there's anything that I might have missed, whether that be character moments, storyline details that you guys want to further explore and talk about, please go ahead and let me know your thoughts in the live chat or the comment section box below, ladies and gentlemen. And with that out of the way, we'll see you guys next week. So until then, do me a big favor, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and keep it A+. Talk to you guys later. Bye. If you enjoy our content and want to be a part of helping our channel grow, become a patron supporter. We have affordable tiers to choose from that offer a variety of exclusive and early access content, from audio files for all of our shows for you to enjoy on the road, access to our Discord community, and plenty of reactions, reviews, character breakdowns, and more. Check us out at patreon.com/A+opinions. And as always, remember, like, subscribe, and hit that bell notification so anytime we drop a brand new video, you will be notified.